Here we go. So this week we had to kind of take a break from the bigger projects, so we're covering a couple of the smaller ones, but for now, enjoy the beach with me. So the only downside about coming down to the beach is the trip all the way back up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 38, 39, 40, 41, 42, 43, 44, 45, 47, 48, 49, 50, 51, 52, 53, 54, 60, 61, 62, 63, 64, 65, 66, 67, 68, 69.
So we have our old fuel fill for our boat, and it wasn't sealed properly, so the core is all rotten right around it. It's a little too late in the fall to actually like fully repair it and properly like cut out, because it's a fairly large like section that's bad, but or has moisture in it. But for the moment, I took this out, sanded a slight bevel around it, and I'm just going to cap this section with fiberglass. That way we don't get any more water ingress into the area, and then it can hopefully start drying out over the winter. So that's what I'm going to work on quick. I'll cover with some, hopefully I can get it fairly flush and just cover with some peel ply. At some point I think I'm going to have to cut out a good section of this, sand the backside, and then probably re-core and re-glue in the cabin sole, or just build a new one.
So one of the big projects on Bombadil that we aren't really sure yet how we're going to be tackling is the cockpit and the top sides. The cockpit floor has a lot of rotted coring, and it flexes quite a bit as you move around, and the non-skid is very worn, the gel coat's really thin, and the whole thing is covered in these minute little spider cracks. Parts of the cockpit have been repainted, and those areas look nice, but we'd like to get rid of that patchwork feeling. To do that, we really need to start replacing the core and repainting, but with the weather turning cold and having multiple other really big projects started, it just wasn't in the cards for this winter. In addition, if we start working on the cockpit, it will naturally turn into a much bigger project. On Bombadil's deck, the original non-skid was repainted, and that too has worn down. It's worn down to the point where it's becoming a safety hazard, because even with shoes that have good traction, it's very slippery when it's wet. Even when it's dry, honestly, with minimal motion, meaning we were in the slip on a calm day, I biffed it because I tried to walk across it in my socks. Once we decide to start this project, we're going to have to remove a good amount of the deck hardware, sand off a decent amount of the worn non-skid, open up, fill, and fair some of the larger cracks, prep, tape off, and paint the smooth areas, then prep, tape off, and paint the non-skid. Then we're going to have to rebed and reinstall a bunch of the deck hardware. That doesn't even include the countless small little steps in between, and then you have to add about 10 to 20% more time than anticipated. Add in at least one extra project caused by finding an issue that we weren't aware of, and then one more project for the while we're at it mentality. Oh, and then you have to expect to go about 50% over budget. Basically, with all of that taken into consideration, it's probably going to be a while before we're able to get this project started. So we found ourselves applying a few band-aids. We knew that this fuel fill was causing some major water ingress issues into the coring, and Philip was actually in the middle of glassing in the floor support structure, so he added this fairly easy project to his afternoon. This was definitely one of those while we're at it projects that Philip and I are just incapable of passing up the opportunity. This is actually how we found ourselves with a gutted boat during Kalamazoo's refit. Philip was futzing with some wiring and I was removing the moldy carpet from the walls. Everything was going nicely to plan until I hit the galley. One small piece of carpet was behind a small piece of wood trim. Only to remove the wood trim, I had to remove the ancient microwave, and to remove the microwave, the water heater had to be moved. But to get the water heater out of the cockpit, it had to be cut in half, which was just a delight. Then, while Philip was cutting the water heater apart and finding himself in very close proximity to the underside of the icebox, we realized that it was not insulated. There was also the issue of me not being able to reach the bottom, and we decided to just remove it and install a hefty Susan. Well, they were all the rage at the time, and we did love ours. I miss it dearly. The issue that we ran into was to cut out the old icebox. The counter in its entirety had to be removed. So we found ourselves with a full galley makeover, and then we had to add a refrigerator, a water heater, hefty Susan pieces, a new counter, and a new sink, all to the shopping list. But back to the project at hand. After cutting out the pieces, Philip mixed up some resin and just glassed everything together. Then we added a layer of peel ply on top and let it cure. Making it pretty is just gonna have to wait for another day. In Michigan, we do have to work around the weather in the winter, so anytime we are able to remove something from the boat and work on it remotely, we try to save this for a rainy day, or well, more so a snow day. In light of this, a few days after Philip finished this little glassing project, he added another little project to our list. We have a relatively wet boat, and anytime we are sailing to windward, the spray just covers the deck. In front of our winch farm is a piece of wood. I've been referring to it as a combing. Philip's been calling it a breakwater. If you know the actual name for it, just let me know. I'd love to get that figured out. This combing protects all of the rope that inevitably ends up at the base of the mast, and any waves or spray that come over and wash over the deck just keeps our lines from going with it. It's varnished wood and it really needs a facelift, but Philip and I have a thing about exterior wood, as in we don't do it. For now, it's just getting pulled off and brought over to Philip's workshop, aka his parents' workshop. And then when the weather is not letting us work on the boat, or some other more pressing projects pop up, you know, like my cabin sole, which is still not done. Once those are completed, or they're put on hold, then we'd pull this thing out and get started working on it.
Alright, so, well, if you can see it, but there's all water sitting here. This front curve piece is designed to keep water from going aft on the boat when there's waves breaking over, but it's also keeping water from draining out. And it's a piece of, I mean, it's beautiful, but it's wood and it's exterior woodwork, and so I'm going to take it off. Hopefully I can drain it so I don't cause water damage with the water collecting there. And eventually I will replace it with something else. I have some ideas in hand. Probably some like fiberglass foam or something that make it look nice, but not have to do varnish.
As Philip said, this area was collecting water and it was pooling up on the deck, while the top of the boat is fiberglass and theoretically all of the through deck fasteners have been properly sealed. It's best practice to not test them or let water hang out if it just doesn't need to. Well, we still haven't started to make the replacement for this piece, and I am sorry to get towards the end of this video without a real conclusion, I guess. The main reason that this video is a little bit shorter and I don't have any further progress is simply due to the fact that we took a road trip, more on that next week, and Philip had to go on a 2-week work trip right after said road trip. While he was gone, I definitely could have done some work on the boat myself and gotten some videos, but I chickened out. When we work on the boat together, it's Philip's job to place the ladder, climb up first, and tie it off. I am really afraid of heights, and the idea of climbing up a ladder without it being secured is a no in my book. So things have just gotten put on hold for a bit, and that's okay. Sometimes a little bit of time off helps us to kind of regroup and see what we're doing from another angle. This piece really did take some effort to remove, and there was actually a hidden bolt that went down into a bulkhead through the deck that we had no way of either seeing or removing. So this is one of those while we're at it projects that spawned one of those are you f***ing joking projects. One quick and dirty fiberglass patch in the rain later, and that bugger is going to have to wait for warmer weather before we make it look halfway decent. So thanks for hanging out with us this week. Next week's video should have a slightly warmer climate, and in the meantime, enjoy this little clip of Philip finding our mystery bolt. See you guys next week.
Still a bolt left. That's not good. All right. That's buried on a bulkhead. See if you can get you. Shoot.